Good evening, folks. It's 7 p.m. It's Thursday. That means it's time for Facebook Live with Red Fez. Now, as we have been doing over the last few weeks, we're just going to wait a few minutes while people get online. So if you're one of the early ones to tune in, do please get this shared now. Get as many people on as we possibly can. Do be thinking about some of those questions, some of those burning questions that you've wanted to ask about technology, about IT, about computers, about tablets, whatever. Fire them in. I've got the chat open on my screen here, so I'll be able to see those coming through. And we have had some people send us some questions during the week, so that's good. We will be answering those, so we do have some to answer. But please do send some more through as well. We will be wrapped up well in time for you to be able to do your clap for carers at 8 o'clock as well. So don't worry about that. We're not going to overrun. And I'm actually hoping to have some food before then as well. So I'm not going to waffle on too much. So please do get sharing. I hope you've had a good week. And we've certainly had a good one. It's been busy. Been good to do. Have some new parts turn up. A bit of bling. You can't see the bling in one of those things. Mechanical gaming keyboard with lots of LED lights. Great fun. We do like a little bit of bling in the office. It brightens it up a little bit, you see. See, when you work from home, you can have whatever equipment you want. You want nobody to distract or anything like that. So it's great. It's fantastic. We're all getting used to working from home. For us, we've been doing it a couple of years, but I know for some of you, it's a new thing. I hope you're coping with it, and I hope you're not kind of going too stir crazy a little bit. I hope it's going well for you. I actually think quite a few more of us are going to be working from home when things kind of settle down a bit. So, we all kind of really need to get used to it. So, right, we've had a couple of minutes of waffle from me. So hopefully we've got a few more people on. I am going to actually have a look at some of the questions that have come in. And I'm going to go straight to one that I've had on the text. This has come from John. Is it true that the Windows 10 update is deleting files from your computer? Now, we have actually read an article about this from a chap called Davey Winder. I read it online, but he writes for a magazine called PC Pro, which is a magazine I buy. It's a great magazine. So I've got a good source on this. And apparently so, there is one of the Windows 10 updates that appears to have caused some problems for a very small number of users. Now, we always hear these scare stories about Windows updates doing things. Now, you've got to remember, there are millions of Windows 10 users out there, and the number of scare stories that come in are minuscule. We're talking a handful. So, in actual fact, rather than us concentrating on how Windows updates can screw up your computer, we should be thinking about how well Windows do to actually get updates out there that don't screw up your computer, or don't screw up more computers. Bearing in mind the amount of different hardware and different computers we've got, the fact that they can update the operating system and it still work is actually quite a good feat of engineering. That said, we have had personal experience of having to deal with computers after a Windows update has gone through. So it can snarl things up, it can upset things, and sometimes things may need a little bit of a reset. It would appear that one of the latest updates is a bit like that, and even worse, there certainly have been reports that it has deleted some files and folders from users' C drives. It's not the first time that this has happened. There was one of the feature updates about 18 months ago that had the same problem, and that was so bad that Microsoft pulled the rollout of that feature update and tried to fix the problem before it then started rolling it out to other users. So do excuse me, I'm just going to move the keyboard because I think, well, the cat is going to sit on it and will probably stop things from broadcasting. So Microsoft have had this particular issue before. So I don't know the scale of this. All I will say is some people have said, well, let's not install the backup or uninstall the backup. It can be a little bit more difficult. It's certainly hard these days to not get the installs come through. So what you do need to do is make sure that you are backing up. Okay, back up your files and folders. Take a system image backup of your computer, and we might do a session on that in the next couple of weeks about backing up. But just make sure that you do that. You should be doing it anyway. Even more so, do it now, and it just makes sure that if anything does get deleted, you can recover it back, okay? Because there's other reasons why things might get deleted. We can accidentally delete things, hard drives can fail, whatever. So we should be having backups as good practice anyway. And if you got those, then you needn't really worry about this update coming through that probably won't delete your files, but just might, because there have been some reports that some people have lost some things. So John, I hope that answers your question. Next question is another Windows related question. When is Windows 11 due? Okay, that's a good question. We've had Windows 7, we had Windows 8, we didn't get Windows 9. Microsoft went straight for Windows 10, so when's Windows 11? Well, actually the answer to that probably explains why Microsoft missed off Windows 9 and went straight for Windows 10. Because the simple answer is there will be no Windows 11, or Windows 12, or Windows 13. Windows 10 is the final Windows operating system. So does that mean that that's it? Windows is not going to improve and get better? No. Now, I alluded to this a little bit in the answer to the previous question about the Windows updates, and I mentioned something called feature upgrades. And this is the way Windows is now going. So what's happened before is you've had a version of Windows. So let's say you started off with, say, Windows 95, if you remember those days. That lasted about 3 years, and then we got Windows 98, which lasted a short while before Windows 98 Second Edition, and then we got Windows Millennium, if you remember that. Not many people use that one. Before we then moved into Windows XP, and then into Windows Vista, and then Windows 7. So a cycle of every 3 to 5 years, Windows would launch a new version. So there'd be lots of new bells and whistles and lots of new features. What Windows have decided to do now is say, well, we've got to Windows 10. We're now going to call every iteration now still Windows 10. It's a bit like Apple does with its Mac OS X. Okay, it's been OS X for like years. Okay, but they just have different versions and they actually give them names. So you know, Mojave and Catalina and all that kind of stuff. Windows decided not to give them fancy names, unfortunately. They may well change that. So Windows 10 is the definitive Microsoft operating system. And what happens is that every 6 months you get these feature upgrades, which are almost like, I don't know, mini new operating systems, if you like. So you get the cycle of security updates that we've always had, but now rather than you having to go and upgrade to a new operating system every 3 to 5 years, around about every 6 months you get a kind of a feature upgrade where we get these new things. What has changed is the fact that the support life for these is now different. So Windows 7, end of extended support for that was January this year, even though Windows 7 started right back in 2010. Okay, so that's a long time to have an operating system supported. 10 years ain't going to happen now. Generally, each of these feature upgrades lasts about 18 months in terms of mainstream support. Some enterprise users, so these are the big companies, will get support for a bit longer than that, but they're paying for it. But for the likes of you and me, we're going to get about 18 months. So the important thing is you need to make sure that you are running the latest version, the latest feature upgrades. Now, there is a video on our YouTube site that tells you a little bit about that and how to check that you are on the main version of Windows. It's also on our website as well, so check that out, redfez.co.uk. If you want to go on there, we do a quick walkthrough which shows you how to check which version of Windows you've got on your computer. You should be on 1909 is the latest one. See, they've not given it fancy names, they're giving it numbers. But that's the one that you should be on. Okay, actually we'll probably do another one anytime, so I'll watch out for that, but 1909 is one we should be on. So the answer to the question is, when will Windows 11 come out? The answer is never, unless Microsoft has a sudden change of heart, and that's probably not likely. I think they're stuck along this path of doing things the Apple way. Okay, next question. This is quite an appropriate one, and I know a lot of people are concerned about this. How can I stop fishing? Okay, and now I don't mean going down to the local pond or river with your fishing rods and catching fish. We're talking fishing spelt with a PH. You probably know what this is, but just in case you don't, I'm going to tell you what it is, and that is where somebody sends you an email or a text or even a phone call, pretending that they are from somebody you know, when in actual fact they're not. So it's often from an organisation you know, so it might be your bank, or it might be PayPal, or somebody like that. And what they're trying to do is get information from you, usually a password, so that they can then get into your account. Okay, so it's a way of hacking. Okay, so we have this vision of hackers being these people sat at computers trying to guess your passwords. All right, okay, it might happen, but that's not the way generally that systems get broken into. It's usually compromised passwords that we've given out through something like a phishing attack or other ways, things like that. Now, the thing is that the way we've kind of been taught to combat this is to be wise to it. A bit of education, a bit of training will spot them, but they can get difficult. I actually got one today on my phone, of all things. I thought the timing was rather good, so I'm just going to move this on here. I don't know if you can see that on there. It might focus, it might not. There we go. Look at that. To keep your giffgaff services running, sign in below and follow the steps immediately. But notice that is not giffgaff's email, it's mygg-team.com. So straight away, I'm looking at that thinking, that's not from giffgaff. I'm just going to ignore that completely. And if I was worried, I'd go on my giffgaff account and just check. Simple as. So we know that, and we can do that. If I go on that, it's going to ask me to put my username and password, isn't it? And then they're in my giffgaff account. Okay. Would that be a problem to me if they got into my giffgaff account? Potentially. But it's the fact that they know that I might use that username and password on something else as well. So it's not just the fact that they can get into the giffgaff account, it's the fact they could potentially get into other things. And that's where we talk about good password management, which we had a chat about last week. So actually, one of the best ways to stop phishing is to not rely solely on passwords, to use what we call multi-factor authentication, or sometimes known as two-factor authentication. What it essentially means is there are two things you need in order to be able to log into a system or an application. Something you know and something you have. So something you know would be a password, something you have would well be something like your mobile phone. Some systems it might be your fingerprint, okay, and your mobile phone actually uses fingerprints or thumbprints. It could be a dongle that you have to put in or something like that. It's an extra thing. What that means is that if somebody gets your password, it's useless because they still can't get in. Okay, now this is really effective at reducing breaches through phishing, because with the best will in the world, okay, we can still get taken in. If we've had a stressful day, if we're not quite on the ball, it's very easy to respond to that email or that text thinking it was genuine and it's not. And as I say, they're getting harder and harder to spot. So we need to wise up to it, and we need to be prepared. And the best way to do that is to use some form of multi-factor authentication. Some things do that already. If you do online banking, you will know that you generally have to have something more than just passwords, and they usually ask you a lot of information before you go on anyway. So you used to get a little dongle from your bank, but these days, again, they're probably going to ask you to authenticate using the app on your mobile phone. That's quite common. Microsoft with Office 365, we are Office 365 resellers, and we are required to ensure that all of our clients have multi-factor authentication for all of their users. That's part of our agreement with Microsoft. So if you have an Office 365 account, you will be multi-factor authenticating if you need to log in. So they're rolling that out as well. But obviously not every application natively has multi-factor authentication on it. So what you need to do is find a system that's going to cover you and allow you to have multi-factor authentication across everything that you use. And there are ways that can be done. Generally, though, only if you're a business kind of user. So if you are a business user and you want to know about that, then you do need to talk to us. But certainly, if you've got opportunities to use multi-factor authentication, you should do it, because that way it keeps phishing. Well, it's not that phishing stops, but it's that the consequences of it are pretty much removed, which is a good thing. Okay, so that's 3 questions that we've dealt with tonight. we've gone into quite a bit of detail, so I know your brain might be a little bit frazzed. So I'm going to call it a night at that. Thank you very much for tuning in, and I hope that it's been a useful session for you. I know we have 3 questions that have given you some useful answers. Please do this week make sure that you send any questions through to us. So how can you do that? Go on to our Facebook page, facebook.com/RedFezComputing, which you're already on if you're watching this, or you could pop onto our website, redfez.co.uk. Either way, and you can pop some questions on there. How do you do it on the website? Just fill out the contact form and send your question through. That's absolutely fine. You could text us the question, 07518 893 That is our mobile number. You'll also find that on our Facebook page as well. 07518 893 So text us if you want to. Other than that, it's about to start raining, which means it's going to get loud in here, so it probably is a good time to wrap up. So thanks very much for tuning in. We'll see you next week at 7 p.m. for more Facebook Live with Red Fez. Thank you very much.